Molly, this evening is in your honor. Look at the following you have.
Thank you. It's wonderful.
Moving
Thank you
on.
all.
I want to move on to Molly, whom you're here for tonight. And Molly has a long list of credentials and accomplishments. She's daring and bold, innovative, a visionary, a trailblazer. I'm going to, however, focus on three accomplishments of Molly that personally have meant a lot to me and Rabbi Baruch Klar. The first one is Molly suggested when we had our synagogue, our shul, the Chabad shul, we were, let me see, this was quite a few years ago. Molly had a vision of doing a talent night for women, where each woman would get to express her own inner light, her passion. I unfortunately was not even able to attend that night. So imagine, it made such a mark on me and an impression without me even being there. But I saw the women and I heard the women who were involved and who participated as the talent or as the audience. And they felt so touched and moved personally that and they said, can we do it again? Can we do it again? I'm not taking that on. It takes a Molly Schwartz. That's number one. Number two is Molly started something, I believe it was called community service in the public schools. And eventually she brought it to day schools, including Kushner Academy Day School in Livingston, where the students were expected to step into their role as members of Jewish society and community and give to the community in whatever way you want to. And it made a huge dent on them. It became a mandatory part of their education and something that they embraced. And I saw this firsthand. It was just unbelievable. From her idea came this huge life-altering reality. And the last thing I want to mention, and I'm going to move it on, we're going to move on to Molly and listen to her journey, is one day Molly was at my husband, Rabbi Baruch Klar's class in the Lubavitch Center. Right now it's on Zoom. And my husband just mentioned, we're starting a Shabbat house. We're going to build it. And that was that. And Molly, before my eyes, her eyes lit up. And she had so many ideas. She was just taken by this concept. She took us by our hands and walked us through the birth and the creation of the Shabbat house. I don't know that it could have happened without you, Molly. You don't think you realize how undirected we were at the moment, at that time. We really just had a thought and a name, and you gave it flesh. You compared it to the tent of Abraham and Sarah. You gave every room a name. You had Amir in town do a video on it that went out on social media. You just got us going. You got the whole show going, which is what you do again and again. Now in Florida, wherever you go, you can't even help it. It's just who you are. So without further ado, thank you everybody for coming on. And now we present Molly Schwartz.
Devora, they were beautiful words, and I really appreciate it coming from you. And I'm so happy that you and Rabbi Klar are operating the Shabbat house, and you put a lot of energy and love in everything you do. So thank you. I also want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk about my battle with breast cancer. But first, I want to share thoughts about Kiddush Levana and what I learned. Then I wanted to discuss what I learned about the moon and its feminine qualities. And finally, I will talk about my personal story and my paintings. Okay. I did not know much about the ritual of Kiddush Levana, the sanctification of the moon. I do remember seeing a group of men standing outside of my shul congregation AA, BJ, and D, and chanting some prayers while looking up at the bright moon. Then they made a circle and danced. The ceremony looks like a joyous ritual with much praying and dancing. I then found out that this ritual is done at night when the moon is growing and is bright enough that we can benefit from its light. The moon has the most visible of all the stars and planets, so we celebrate its renewal by making a blessing in appreciation of the cosmos, all created by Hashem, by God. I also found out that the Jews are identified as a people of the moon, whereas other nations are identified with the sun. I wanted to share a book excerpt that I read that discusses the different attributes of the sun and the moon. I didn't read it, but I got a lot out of the excerpt. It is called Circle, Arrow, Spiral, and was written by Miriam Kosman, who lives in a Haredi community in Bnei Brak, Israel. At the heart of the book is a mysterious midrash from the Talmudic tractate of Chulin. Just let me know if I'm pronouncing it right. Thank you. Rabbi Shimon ben Pazi asked the following. It is written, and God made the two big luminaries. And yet, first it says, the big luminary and the small luminary. If they are both big, why is one later called small? Rabbi Shimon answers this question by explaining how the two equal-sized luminaries became unequal in size. The moon said to the Holy One, blessed be he, master of the world, two kings cannot share the same crown. He said to her, go and make yourself small. Now this midrash is not about gender at face value. It refers to the Jewish people and their longing for messianic times. Each month, when the Kiddush Levana prayer is recited on the new moon, the Jewish prayers and blessings allude to this mystical yearning for the, like as Devorah said, for the restoration of the moon to her former glory. Yet in the Kabbalistic tradition, the moon is associated with the woman. And this midrash is also often understood to refer to male-female relations. The sun bestows light while the moon receives it. The male prototype is a mashbiach, or the bestower, and the female prototype is a mikabel, or the receiver. The interaction that takes place between these two forces or ideal, when they are in balance. And the sun in Western civilization is connected to power and conquest, while the moon represents dependence and interconnection. It is about knowing how to listen and validate whoever is doing the giving. There is a dynamic relationship between the sun and the moon that gives the moon a degree of autonomy in which she will reflect the sun, when she will reflect the sun, and when she will not. Miriam Kosman states that when the moon starts to diminish, it is actually amplifying the moon's feminine aspects of being the receiver. That as the moon shrinks to just a thin crescent, we don't always appreciate what the moon is capable of receiving in its diminished state. But we should realize that when the moon dispels the least light, we can draw closer to Hashem. According to Miriam Kosman, God is saying that the midrash from Chulin has a deeper meaning. He goes on to say, know somewhere deep in the pain of smallness that underneath the surface of the entire flow of history, the months and the years, your quiet presence will be a magnetic force that draws humanity back to God. You will be small, your life will be painful, but in the end, it all depends on you. Miriam is referring to the feminine aspects of the moon. I understand and take to heart the idea of experiencing pain as a woman. I think that as women, we have the ability to feel pain more deeply, but to transform this pain with God's help. Just like the moon, as women, we are able to shine brightly or to reduce our light on a monthly basis based on our reproductive cycle. Actually, there have been studies that show the strong connection between women and how their monthly cycles become attuned to one another the more time they spend together. And while I have been a member of congregation A, B, J, and D for over 45 years, I think I was searching for something that eluded me. I wanted to feel a stronger connection to my spirituality. I began learning more. I also began connecting to different groups of people. One group that I especially enjoyed was a mothering women's group that is under the umbrella of Midwifery magazine. I was always drawn to being a mother. I just loved the role. Although my children were older at that point, I enjoyed meeting women who discussed what was important to them regarding their children. And these women really seemed to listen to their intuition. Do you know that sometimes our intuition is whispering to us, and sometimes it's shouting as loud as it can until we hear and listen? One day, about 20 years ago, out of the blue, I had a profound day of healing. Maybe some of you have had a day where you felt that everything was coming together to make meaning of something that had happened in the past. I felt this tremendous surge of energy, peace, and light come into my body, and I had no clue why this was happening, but I tried to figure out what it meant to me. Right after I had my special day, my awakening, I became aware of things that I had not noticed or thought about before. The world seemed so much brighter and exciting. Any little thing that I noticed brought me joy, to the point where my family looked at me and wondered what was wrong with me, but I was enjoying it. I had just graduated with a degree in consumer affairs from Montclair State University and was trying to decide what to do with it. I wanted to do something tangible in an experiential, hands-on kind of way, so I decided to become a doula. For those of you who do not know, it is a woman who helps women when they give birth. The doula supports them on an emotional level. I think I was being guided to help women in some capacity when they were at a vulnerable time in their lives. I attended several births, and it was a beautiful experience, filled with peace and light. But I decided I wasn't ready to commit to waking up in the middle of the night and being on call on a regular basis. So I explored other ways to express my creativity. I began painting in the fall of 2004. I enjoyed being in the flow state, which happens when everything falls into place while I am painting. It takes me out of my body and into my soul. I found painting very healing, and I painted landscapes, still lives, and portraits of my children. Then on Labor Day 2017, I found a lump in my left breast. My whole world stopped. I ran to my doctor, who told me that it looked like I had a cancerous tumor and told me to make an appointment to get a biopsy. It turned out that I had a stage 2 tumor, which was graded between B and C. The cancer had spread to several lymph nodes as well. It was diagnosed as a HER2 positive cancer, which tends to grow and spread faster than other breast cancers. But it is an easier cancer to treat since the discovery of Herceptin, an immunotherapy drug which helps to counteract HER2 positive cancer. I want to strongly encourage each and every woman on the Zoom call to please make sure that you get your mammograms on a regular basis. At first, I kicked myself for not getting my mammogram over a period of 3 years, and I found out that cancer cells are always circulating in our body. But when our immune system is compromised, one cell can quickly grow into a huge number of cells in a short period of time. Your body could have a tumor growing for many years before it is even detected. I began my first chemotherapy treatment right before the last days of Sukkot in October 2017 in New Jersey. Then after my second treatment, I flew down to Florida and continued treatment there. I was happy to find out about Sharsheret, a Jewish breast cancer organization that helps women and their families deal with cancer. They were my support, and a social worker was assigned to touch base with me on a regular basis. Other women also reached out to me, and one told me what I was in store for based on her experience. She said that getting through chemo was the most difficult part of the protocol that also included surgery and radiation. That was an understatement. I was told to expect that the chemo would really hit at the end of the second day or the beginning of the third day. What I didn't realize was that with each additional chemo, I became weaker, sicker, and didn't want to look at food at all, or actually eat. I lost over 50 pounds, which I subsequently gained back when I began to feel better. I even negotiated with my oncologist to skip my number 6 and final round of chemo on the condition that my MRI results were clear. And thank God they were. I had a lumpectomy 2 weeks later, and then I had radiation for about 6 weeks. While I was intensely sick in bed, wishing that the chemo would be over and I would survive it, and thinking that I didn't know how I was going to make it through, thoughts and images started coming to me. You might think it seems hokey, but I know that when I first began receiving these images, I didn't know what to make of them, especially since they seemed to be coming out of nowhere. But I remember hearing stories of how famous musicians and writers felt when they were starting to create something new. They felt as if they were not the originators of that piece of music or literature, but that they were channeling an outer force or an energy that was helping them to create that song or that book. They had to be receptive and willing to receive. So I decided to write down what I was seeing and to explore where these images would take me. I wondered, could this be the inner empty space that is full of meaning if we tap into it? Could this be like the waning of the moon when it retracts and where we as women can listen to our inner voice and bring out ideas that we might never have thought of? I do know that being diagnosed with cancer made me a true artist. I wanted to explore what my cancer journey meant to me and to share my feelings with others. Having experienced what I felt was one of the lowest of lows in my life, that I can compare to the moon when it ebbs, I had to use all my strength and will to connect to something greater than myself to be able to climb out of this black hole, to take some of the inner light of the moon with me, to share what I learned so that my reflective light can be shared with other women going through the same thing. After my radiation was completed and I had gained some strength, I began to paint what I call my Cancer Journey series that came out of the images that I saw in my mind while I was undergoing chemo and radiation. There are 3 paintings in total, and now I'd like to, Yaakov, if you can put the first one on the screen, and I will talk about each one separately. Is it on the screen now? I don't know. Oh, there it is.
Nice.
First, I will talk about what I was trying to do, and then I'll go into detail. Visually, I wanted to paint the dripping of the chemo over the bitter pill to depict the actual drip of the chemo. These drops also signify the tears of the women who have to undergo chemotherapy. I also wanted to portray the visual difference between the two chemotherapy treatments, one that looks so innocuous and one that only a scientist can interpret. Yet they are both poisonous with myriad side effects. Someone who had recently gone through the same protocol gave me this piece of advice. Everything pales in comparison to the chemo. It's what separates the women from the girls. I call this a picture bitter pill, as you can see if you look inside on the parameter of the pill on top. I began to feel the effects of my first round of chemo. These feelings took hold of me and made me feel alien in my own body. I had an acrid, metallic taste in my mouth. I felt this intense need to spit my saliva out over and over again. It affected the way my food tasted for many months. I felt the physical impact. My clothes started to stretch out like those diet ads with before and after. I speedily became the after picture. Lying in my bed one day, I read about the types of chemo that were prescribed for me, and this is what I found out. Taxotere. I kept myself sane by blocking out some of the other side effects like bleeding gums, mouth sores, nosebleeds, the vomiting, the diarrhea. My spirits lifted when I read this chemotherapy drug is classified as a plant alkaloid. Yeah. This drug is derived from the periwinkle plant, the bark of the Pacific yew tree, the mayapple plant, and the Asian happy tree. Just imagine, in my mind, I saw an image of myself sitting in a meadow filled with fragrant foliage. It took me out of my chemo self, if only for a little bit. Then I read about my other chemo, carboplatin, the numbness and tingling in my feet and hands, a mummifying effect that remained until the treatment is completed and even after that. This toxic drug is derived from mustard gas derivatives, metal salts, nitrosurias. No wonder it causes hair loss, weakness, and abnormal blood counts. I couldn't believe my eyes. Did the drug company think that a layperson couldn't fathom what the implications would be? Immunotherapy drugs, including Herceptin and Perjeta, were mixed into my chemo, multiplying the side effects exponentially. I didn't mind the infusions themselves with a clear liquid dripping into my vein. It seemed so innocuous until the symptoms hit at the end of the second day. And Yaakov, now you can switch to the next picture. Okay, this is called The Dream. My painting depicts the idea of a young woman who just had a baby and is nursing the baby in the hospital. To her left is a frailer, older woman facing her first radiation treatment. There are some electrical currents that flow out of the radiation machine and toward the nursing mother. A cry for help. The nursing mother has plenty of milk, and feeling compassionate to the older woman, who actually could be a version of herself, her breast spurts out drops of milk, one of them landing on the woman's lips. A symbol of connection, a message that no matter what stage of life we're in, we as women have incredible strength and endurance. Our bodies are truly miraculous. As someone who commented on my painting shared, a brutally honest portrayal of our bodies, what they are capable of and what they unfortunately have to endure. I'll talk just briefly about a little bit more about how I found my tumor. When, when people ask me, how did you find your cancer? Some are incredulous when they hear my response. I found my tumor in a dream, I tell them. You might wonder what I mean. Labor Day weekend, 2017. I decided to lie down toward the end of the day. I fell into a light sleep, and during my dream, I heard a baby cry incessantly. The baby in my dream happened to be my 1-month-old granddaughter. My daughter had given birth a month before, and she and her family were visiting over the weekend. In my muddled dream state, I felt I had to go nurse a crying baby. I had nursed all 4 of my children decades ago. I felt a tug, a pull on my left breast, as though it had filled up with milk. I felt very disoriented, wondering, what was that strange dream about? Then I felt my left breast and reacted with shock. There was a mass in my breast, a cancerous tumor that measured 3 centimeters or the equivalent of a little over an inch, according to the mammogram. A minuscule amount of human flesh, when you think about it, but I was staged at 2B/C. People told me that my dream was a blessing from God in disguise. I have subsequently learned that dreams-related medical problems are very, very vivid. And the dream is somehow more real, and they are also likely to recur. For me, it only took 1 time. And I was very nervous about going into the radiation machine, which looks like it does in the painting, although when you're inside it, you can't really, you feel like you're inside the machine. So the only thing I wanted to mention that would help me is that I imagined that the white illuminated cylindrical inside of the radiation machine was really a universal womb protecting anyone who found themselves inside this contraption. Now you can go to the next picture. Thank you. Now this is called a healing. As a practicing Jew, I felt a calling to paint this picture I named a healing. I completed my cancer treatment shortly after Passover, a time of reflection and contemplation. So in a sense, I was experiencing my own exodus, a journey from a place of tight constriction to a vast, expansive universe. The picture conveys a universal message that God will hear our prayers and heal us from our pain. When I was told that I had a 90% chance of a 5-year life expectancy after my chemotherapy was over, I was initially thrilled. After all, that left a 10% chance of me dying from my cancer, a very good rate of return. A friend, tongue-in-cheek, told me that it didn't pay to worry, since living is not a guarantee for anyone, especially as we age. Anyone could cross the street at the wrong time and get killed by a car. Her statement made me wonder what true healing is. Is it only a manifestation of your physical health during a specific time and place, or could it mean more? Something deeper. I again turn to the story of the Israelites during the Exodus and how they wandered through the desert for 40 years. As a people, they were transformed from slaves to a free nation. Their spiritual DNA was changed forever. I wonder if a person can change their spiritual DNA after going through a harrowing experience. Some people call it the dark night of the soul. For me, my cancer represented the dark night, a journey that included immense upheaval. I questioned, how would I get through my protocol? With each additional round of chemotherapy, I got progressively sicker until I couldn't eat more than a few bites or take more than a few steps. Bernie Siegel, MD, an oncologist who helps his patients interpret what their cancer means to them, shares. One of the primary differences between healing and curing is that healing is all about the spirit, whereas curing is everything about the physical. He shares his experience of seeing patients who, after enduring their grueling treatments, have a zest for life that they never experienced before. They have grown from their experience to realize that life is a gift, and for as long as they are on this earth, they will do all the things they didn't allow themselves to do before their diagnosis. I also felt a level of gratitude, as if a heavy weight has been lifted off my shoulders. God put a stumbling block in my way, and then it was removed. I am blessed to be able to enjoy my children and grandchildren and watch them take their own journeys through life. Okay, that's it for the pictures. And I was going to say this last picture, that's, that's it. This picture shows a connection between a woman in a cave reaching out to Hashem for Nachamu, for comfort. The Shabbos Nachamu, or the Shabbat of comfort, which follows right after Tisha B'Av, is supposed to console us after the destruction of the temple. The opening words of the Haftorah are Nachamu, Nachamu, Ami, be consoled, my nation. The author I referred to before, Miriam Kosman, describes the deep pain in the moon. The deep pain the moon is in as the moon contemplates its smallness. I compare it to women who, while undergoing the breast cancer protocol, feel helpless and vulnerable, and yet they need to turn it around to realize that in the end, it all depends upon them or us, how we approach our diagnosis and our attitude. We have to be able to endure and overcome and realize that we can rely on Hashem's comfort to get us through. When we think of the word small, we think that we are powerless. Yet near the end of Parshat Et Hanan, Moshe describes Hashem's love for the Jewish people, not because we were numerous like other nations, but we were actually the fewest of all nations. What are we to make of Moshe's words that speak to the smallness as a people? Targum Yonatan interprets it not to be about numbers at all, but about self-image. He translates it not as the fewest of people, but as the most lowly and humble of peoples. We might be small in numbers, but we have defied the laws of history, and we still have a message of hope for humanity. And as women who are dealing with breast cancer, we can open up to a power greater than ourselves. And when we do, we can become greater and endure more than we originally thought we could. I know I had to tap into an inner strength I didn't know I had when I was going through my treatment. And at times, I really didn't know how I could get through this crisis. Thank God the body is truly miraculous, and I began to heal and feel better and have more energy several weeks after I completed my radiation. And after I completed my paintings that were part of my own healing process, I decided that I wanted to share my paintings with a larger audience, to share my story, and to help other women share theirs. So I am currently working on an expressive arts exhibition called Expressing Ourselves, Women Living with Cancer, that will be held at the Miami Beach Jewish Community Center. It will take place during Breast Cancer Awareness Month in October. I want to reach out to other women undergoing breast cancer and give them an opportunity to tap into their many feelings. Feelings that can include anger, rage, sadness, grief, and denial related to finding out that they have breast cancer. And then feelings of joy, peace, wholeness, letting go and letting God into their lives when they come to terms with their illness. I want women to know that their feelings are important and to encourage them to process and share their story with other women. Just like sanctifying the moon on its reappearance as a way of renewing our trust in God's constant presence in our lives. As women, I believe that when we express our innermost feelings, we can live a healed life, no matter what our diagnosis. I want to thank Devorah and Bora Klar for all the work they have contributed to the Jewish community at large during their time of service. From visiting prisoners and having them stay in their home in Morristown, which some of you might not know, but they actually did that, to opening and running the book and gift shop, to running many Jewish Renaissance fairs and a large number of other programs too numerous to count. And of course, this initiative of the Shabbat House and extending their hospitality to the community at large. And all this they do in the name of the Lubavitcher Rebbe. They do everything with such energy and love. May they continue their holy work in good health with simcha and nakas from their children and grandchildren